Hi, welcome to the news episode of Sports Talk Central. I'm your host, Deep Mahmood, with our normal co-host, Hunter. And today we're going to be doing mainly talk a little bit about baseball, talk a little bit about wide receivers in the NFL, and then talk about the draft and also potentially new ownership in the nation's capital. Let's first talk about MLB. We had the first couple weeks. A few things of note. We've had some word celebrations. We've had Tampa Bay Rays go 13 win 13 straight, and then lose their next two games. Um, what were your first? What are your thoughts so far this season so far?
I mean, the Rays are really good. I mean, I think everyone knew they were going to be great coming into the season. They have the pitching, they have the hitting, they have the bullpen. I didn't expect them to start out, it was 13-0, just making sure, right? I mean, I didn't
Yeah,
expect that to happen because I don't think we've ever seen that in our lifetime. That's something that's very rare that happens. To sweep 3 to 4 teams right out of the gate, that's impressive. And I think that should show everyone that, they are a contender for the World Series. Heck, we saw them come through our nation's capital with the Nationals, and the Nationals, they actually almost beat them in one of those games. They were up a run or two in the top of the ninth inning. And this was in the Rays. I think we were only 4 or 5-0 at the time. And the Nats almost ended it right there, but they were able to come back and score a few runs in the top of the ninth, and the Nationals got swept for that rest of that series. But I knew that team was good just based off how they were hitting off the Nats. Their pitching is just top notch. That's a fun team to watch overall. There's some teams that are off to a little bit slow starts. Like the Phillies are a little slow right now. I think the Mets are off to a bit of a slow start. The Yankees are playing fine, except after they got a 9 spot in the first inning against, I'm pretty sure it was the Twins on Thursday. That was kind of funny. But it's been a fun season so far these first couple of weeks. Some of these contenders haven't really separated themselves just yet, but that's how it goes, I think, in these early portions. Some teams kind of struggle out of the gate. Some teams, go really fast. But I think by the end of next month, once you get into the summer, you're going to start to see who the true contenders are versus the pretenders.
yeah. No, I think the Rays are a fun team. They do everything right. I think part of the reason why they had that 13-game win streak, they hit well, they defend well, and they pitch well. I mean, if you do all
And they
three,
don't have a big payroll. They don't have a big payroll either.
yeah. But then also, yeah, they do a good job there. I also like Brandon Lau, former product of University of Maryland. He's been doing really well. He's had last few seasons, one of the hardest hitters in baseball in terms of exit velo. Um, he had injuries last year. Look, this is a good team now. Unfortunately, Jeffrey Springs got hurt. When you start 13-0, let's see what happens. I mean, um, so I think they're doing good there. You're right. The Phillies look like they had somewhat of a slow start. They've been picking it up recently. The um, the Mets have had somewhat of a slow start. Um, the Orioles have kind of been mid. Like they've just been like just good enough to be competitive, but not good enough to be overwhelmingly competitive. At the same time, they hit well. They don't play great defense. Not terrible. Their bullpen isn't nothing. It's nothing to write home about, but it's not terrible. Um, uh, like obviously Felix Bautista is really good. Cino Perez has had a little lack of command recently, but I think they can pull it together. I mean, obviously Dylan Tate and Michael Givens not being there definitely hurts that bullpen. Obviously having Rutschman there helps. Ryan Mountcastle had a really good few games, like 9 RBIs in that. I get it. It was against Oakland, but 9 RBIs in that game, and then crushing a 456-foot grand slam a few days ago. Um, so if he can learn, and also they also their batting has gotten a lot better. I mean, I think no, they had like 10. Even though they lost yesterday, they had 10 walks. The day before, they had 9 walks. Rutschman has near 500 on base percentage, even though Gunnar Henderson, his average isn't great. His on base percentage is like 370 right now. So look, I mean, Carlos Correa said it best on TBS when he was there for the playoffs. The old way was you would hit your way out of a slump, but if you see good pitches, if you're on base, it's good while you're in a slump. You're gonna come out of it, and I think we're gonna see some of these guys start to come out of it. I would like to see more lengths coming out of the pitching. I mean, Cole Irvin got optioned down in AAA. Give him a couple of starts. He should be back. Kyle Bradish should be back by Wednesday. I know he took a 104-mile-per-hour liner off his foot. Grayson Rodriguez had one good start, another struggling start, even though Austin Voth it was Austin Voth that gave up 4 or 5 runs, so that was an issue there. Austin Voth has reverted back to what he was with the Nationals. I mean, 5 appearances, in each of his 5 appearances, Austin Voth has given up a home run.
Wow! If only anyone else could have saw that coming.
I mean, granted, even though the Orioles saw that coming as well, they could have seen that coming as well. That's why they didn't like hand Austin Voth a rotation spot. He's basically, they gave him like a long relief spot, but they never really kind of positioned him to be a starter. It was like he's mainly a bullpen guy, but yeah. I expect he's gonna be out pretty soon. Yennier Cano, he's had a couple of good relief outings. Michael Bauman's been pretty solid out of the bullpen. I think their pitching's going to get better. I think their hitting's going to get better. This is a team that's going to be, I think, an 83, 84, 85 win team. I think that's kind of what the team we're looking at right here. Obviously, they got young guys. We're going to see what happens there. But obviously, before we go talk about football, because there's quite a bit of talk about when it comes to receivers, but the Orioles unveiled their new celebration. I'm going to call it the Homer Hose. We all know what everyone is thinking. I'm going to choose to call it the Homer Hose because I want to keep it there. I want the Orioles to keep that celebration, and calling it the other thing that we all know.
Just say it.
The Dong Bong.
Yeah.
It's going to get the more people talk about it, the more it's going to get. MLB is going to get rid of it. Dan Connolly, I think it was Dan Connolly or someone else, said that the Orioles should change it. My advice is grow a pair, accept it. They're trying to promote hydration. They're not trying to promote alcohol. They're trying to promote hydration. And then, by the way, also here's their celebration. So if they hit a single, you start a sprinkler. It's like you mimic starting a sprinkler. If you hit a double, you act like you're a sprinkler. If you hit an extra base hit, and if you hit a home run, you get to go to the Homer Hose. So clearly, they're doing a hydration type of celebration.
What happens when you get a walk-off?
Oh, Gatorade bath.
Yeah.
Or slip and slide.
Yeah, there you go. All right, that's enough.
Yeah, but it's pretty fun. I mean, we also see the Pirates now. I mean, here's what I like about the celebrations this year. They're starting to move away from clothing. The Pirates have the sword now. The Angels still have a samurai helmet. I wonder why they're doing a samurai helmet. But what are your thoughts? The Red Sox have the dumbbells. What are your thoughts on these celebrations?
People are getting creative. We all saw it. Kind of really, it's funny. I'm not going to say like VT started the movement because they had their hammer with what they did, and then the NCAA was a bunch of babies and then banned it, remember, for the College World Series last year. But it's 2023. You're trying to add more fun to a game, which has been represented as boring by a lot of people. Why not? Why not add these cool little quirky fun items just so players can have more fun? The old heads won't like it, but they'll also get used to it. Who cares what they think, to be honest? So I think as the days of this year go on, and I think the future years go on, you're only going to see more of these happen throughout the sport. And honestly, you could see this go into other sports as well.
I don't think it's going to go on to football too much because I feel like
that's probably
like a football is going to be 15 years. They're going to be penalty. There are going to be more penalties.
They already penalize for taunting as much as it is now. So.
Yeah. You've even seen University of Miami kind of stop using the turnover chain. So I feel like in baseball you can get away with it. The only thing is just don't the only fear would be doing it making it so much of a showing off thing that pitchers start hitting batters because of it. Like that's the only scary thing about it. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's fun. It's a fun part of the game. It's growing the game. As long as you're not it's not disrespectful in a non PC way, then that's fine. Like I don't really have an issue with that. So let's just talk about the next story, which is so this was late on Easter. OBJ, Odell Beckham going to the Ravens, 1 year. It's a contract up to 18 million, so it's about 15 million in fully guaranteed money. The base salary is at 1.65 or somewhere in that range. And the signing bonus is at the remaining 13 point whatever. There's 4 void years, so his cap hit for year one is about 3.94 million. So if the Ravens cut him after this year or goes to another team, the Ravens are on the book for 11 million. What were your first thoughts when you saw this news?
I guess I was a little surprised. It's no secret that I have made fun of the Ravens over the years because they are really bad at evaluating wide receiver talent, but it's also kind of the same with the Steelers with that. They're really bad pretty much at evaluating cornerback talent. Every team has its wins for positions and losses for other positions. And I think the Ravens over the years have just not been good at that one. Um, you know, if he's healthy, I think it makes sense. But my biggest thing is, he's coming off a full season. He did not play. He could have played at the end. He chose not to. Now he's coming back after the second torn ACL. When he suits up, it'll be about a little over a year and a half since he played. How is that rust going to be? How is that knee going to be? Is he going to need a little more time to get acclimated into the offense? How does, once he is acclimated, how does he play? Who's he catching passes from? You'd think it's going to be Lamar Jackson, but until a contract is signed, you don't know who it's going to be. So, I think it's still, there's a lot more questions right now than answers. I personally wouldn't have given Odell Beckham 15 million. I think that's a little too much for him right now, considering he hasn't played that much ever since the injury. But that's what he wanted. Apparently, I read today that he originally declined the Jets offer, and then he circled back to the Jets when the Ravens made the offer and said, hey, do you want to match this? I think thinking like, oh, if you match this, I think I'll go there because Aaron Rodgers is supposed to come. But they said no. They drew their line, and they said, we're not going to offer that. So he just said, okay, screw you. I'm going to go sign with the Ravens. So, it gives them a good target, though. Bateman's there. Obviously, having him healthy will be big. It's a decent 1-2 punch, but I still think they need another top receiver. Well, I think, another good option as a receiver for Lamar or whoever is throwing them the ball, because I still think that's, an area I wouldn't say call like a huge weakness, but it's an area where I think they could still improve upon. And, maybe this does help them sign Lamar because I read rumors that like this was like on his wish list or something. I think I read it was like Jeremy Fowler and like another reporter said like if Lamar said if you get me Odell and DeAndre Hopkins, let's talk. And then they got one of them, and maybe that helps. I don't know how true that is though, but I saw that out there. But I think it's more fine than not. I also have a lot of questions about it because he's just been banged up a lot.
Yeah, so just a few things. It was Odell and DeAndre Hopkins. Those were the two guys.
Yeah.
Now, we'll get to DeAndre Hopkins in the next segment because I do think it is somewhat possible because I'm going to tell you why I think it's later point why it's possible the Ravens could get DeAndre Hopkins. But apparently his ACL was never recovered after the first one. Like whoever did it for Cleveland botched his surgery. And apparently in week 9 when he got to the Rams, he was told he had no ACL. So he could have been he said he could have had the surgery then. He chose to do the play through it and at the end of the season get the surgery, like how pitchers or how athletes know they have to get surgeries, but they wait till the end of the season. It just so happened that he got hurt on a non-contact play in a Super Bowl, so that required a second surgery. So apparently, technically, this is 1.5 ACL surgeries because the first one was botched. So just a clarification, that's kind of what it was. Now, I don't know. Maybe he wanted to see what the market was, wait out the market, because the wide receiver market was bad as it is this offseason, so he would be the prime jewel out of all of it. I like the fit. He's been in a Todd Monken offense before. He's had over 1,000 yards in a Todd Monken offense. He can play. You can put him in a slot. You can put him on the outside. He can fit various roles. He's trained with Bateman, so he already has that connection there. I like the fit. I also like the fact that they run first offense. So you still got Andrews, you still got Bateman, you still got Likely, you still got, for a time being, Duvernay, Prochet, and Tylan Wallace. So Odell, if you need him, he can be for short spurts that number one receiver. But if you need him to be a number two or number three receiver and let Mark Andrews carry the load for a little bit, or Isaiah Likely carry the load, or Bateman, you could do the same thing there. So I like that flexibility it creates. Now, that's my thoughts on that. The contract's fine. So now let's get to Hopkins and Anderson. We'll get to Chosen or Robbie Anderson or Chosen Anderson later. But Lamar, you said it. You set it up. Lamar wanted Hopkins and Odell. Now, I don't know how much of that
that was Jeremy Fowler, I think, right? That reported that?
Michael Lombardi.
Mark Lombardi. I got them mixed up. My bad.
Yeah. But no, so apparently that's what he said. Now, how much I believe it, I don't know. But here's my theory on. I actually think that there's a possibility the Ravens get DeAndre Hopkins. Here's why. Derek Mason, when did the Ravens get him? When he was 30, and he already had a couple of contracts out.
Oh, God.
Steve Smith Sr., when did they get him? When he was 30, and he already had a couple of contracts. Anquan Bolden, when did the Ravens get him? 30 and multiple contracts. Are you noticing a trend here?
Yes.
The Ravens go and get certain veteran receivers at a certain point. Odell Beckham, same thing. Mike Wallace, same thing. What would you say DeAndre Hopkins is right now? 30 years old, and he's already had a couple of contracts. So it's right in the Ravens' wheelhouse. Now, here's the other thing the Ravens like to do. If they liked you before, unless you do something really wrong, they will like you again. Ravens tried trading for him back in 2019. Obviously, it didn't work. Ravens were going after him this offseason. There were reports they were, which is why I think that this whole report from Michael Lombardi is somewhat true. Now, after Odell signed, Darius Slay went on a podcast. And I'm paraphrasing from what he said. But remember, he was saying how he was close with DeAndre Hopkins. Then the next topic was he was talking about OBJ and the Ravens, and then he said, well, the Ravens are trying to change their reputation with receivers, and they hope that Odell is a part of it. And then he said, oh, yeah, by the way, I've also heard stuff about certain players now being more incentivized to go there. I'm paraphrasing it, but Darius Slay said, there are guys more interested in Baltimore now. And then he said that after he was talking about receivers and how the Ravens were trying to change the reputation of receivers. He brought up DeAndre for saying how he was in the same draft class, how he was close with him, how he got advice from him when it came to representing himself. The fact that he mentioned receivers and then he chose to drop that insight after receivers, one, Darius Slay is well connected in the NFL. Players talk. So my first thought is, okay, who's he talking about? I don't think he's really talking about a defensive tackle. I don't think he's talking about an edge. I don't think he's talking about an offensive line. I think he's connected, but why if OBJ was a catalyst, and I'm going off of what he said, I don't think a defensive tackle is going to be more incentivized to join the Ravens because of OBJ, or running backs, or tight ends, or that. So it's either corners or receivers. Then he's talking about receivers, and then I'm thinking, okay, who have the Ravens been connected to this offseason? Fans have said Mike Evans, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
the Ravens tried to trade for Cortland Sutton. Remember that. They tried to trade for Cortland Sutton. That didn't happen. Broncos got cold feet there. I'm assuming they got cold feet about Jerry Jeudy. So, who's the guy that I haven't mentioned that the Ravens been targeting? DeAndre Hopkins. Does he fit the type of receiver the Ravens go after? Yes. Have they expressed interest in him before? Yes. And what happened today? DeAndre Hopkins tweeted something out about, in air quotes, about him wanting a raise. So it doesn't seem like he wants money. It's not that he wants to be the highest paid receiver. So it all looks like, and he said stuff about how he doesn't mind blocking and he will work with the team. And given the fact that the Cardinals are in complete disarray, Budda Baker demanded a trade Kyler Murray's going to be out for most of the year. I'm thinking, and the Ravens making deadline deal trades, and sometimes we saw it last year with Hollywood. They kept that Hollywood trade really secret.
Yeah.
Is it possible that the Ravens and the Cardinals and DeAndre Hopkins, there's an agreement, or not? They are close to an agreement that they're not either that they're going to say it before the draft or during the draft, and DeAndre is going to go to Baltimore. Now the question is, how does that change your draft strategy? Again, I'm not saying I have inside information. What I'm saying is I'm reading the tea.
Going down the rabbit hole.
I'm going down the rabbit hole, but I'm also going down a factual rabbit hole based on like pattern and stuff like that. But what are your thoughts? Like, what do you think? What do you think's to happen with Hopkins?
It's interesting. I've been working today, and Brian McFadden, he hosts a podcast with Patrick Peterson. I think you're probably familiar with it.
Yeah.
He did like a little game with him where it was like, you can do like these nonverbal expressions where you would want to be traded. So first who comes up, it was New England Patriots. Yeah. And he basically did a Buffalo Bills. Yep. New York Jets. That was surprising that he basically said no, even though Aaron Rodgers is expected to come there. Then he said Kansas City Chiefs, and we all know what the answer is to that. But based off that, he wants to go to a contender, especially in the AFC. He wants to play for a good quarterback. He would get that in Baltimore with what's the big if, if Lamar Jackson signs. So I think that would be intriguing to him. Hopkins, he's obviously one of the best receivers in the league. He's gone down a little bit these last couple of years. I don't think he's as good as he used to be, but I think on a good chunk of teams, he's still a number one guy. And I think he would be the number one guy on the Ravens. So I do think it makes sense. I think the Ravens would have to figure out, what the asking price I think right now is at least a second round pick. Maybe the Cardinals can try to get a first. Would the Ravens give that up for a receiver who's on the opposite side of 30, especially with someone who is this good? I think that's the question that you should be asking yourself right there, because the Ravens, they're kind of like the Steelers where they don't give up a lot of high draft picks to get players. Heck, it was a surprise when the Steelers gave up a first to get Minkah Fitzpatrick, but Minkah was in the prime of his career. We all knew how good he was going to be. This, I think, it's a little bit different because Hopkins, while he's still good, he's not in the prime of his career anymore. So do you think the Ravens would be fine with giving up a late first to a second round pick for him?
I think it really depends a lot on how badly does Hopkins want to leave, because the Cardinals can say all they want about, we want to keep you there. Hopkins can say, you have no future. You're going to start – the guy you're going to be starting in week 1 is not going to be the guy that is going to be there long term. Even if that is the case, the guy's not going to be there long term. Second, you don't even know Kyler Murray's going to be the quarterback in a few years, because they could get out of that contract, and apparently Kyler Murray is holding back people from wanting to join the Cardinals. The Cardinals, apparently the owner was accused of cheating. Like, they're kind of getting into some turmoil. DeAndre Hopkins could say, hey, I'm 30. I don't have much longer to play. And you also have to remember, as DeAndre, he wasn't really winning a ton in Houston, wasn't really winning a ton in Arizona. This is my one chance to leave. Let me go. And could I see them going late first round pick? Here's how I could see them going late first round pick. The Cardinals eat most of the salary. That is the one way I see them going first round pick. But I don't see them having to give up a first round pick. I think DeAndre wants out of Arizona. The Bills, I feel like if they were interested in DeAndre, they would have traded for DeAndre Hopkins. I believe that there was some reports earlier, like a few weeks ago, but that died down pretty quickly. The Kansas City went out and got a couple of receivers. They could still be in a DeAndre Hopkins market, but they're also in the Allen Robinson market.
His team up in Kansas City would be scary.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone wants to see that. Or I will say, imagine him in Buffalo with Stephon Diggs. Good luck to a lot of other teams out there.
Yeah, but I think, because I feel like when it comes to the trade market and stuff like that with certain teams, the longer a player is out in the market and available in the market, whether it's trade and free agency, if teams were interested in them and they were considered the favorites, and then 2 weeks happen, a week later or 2 weeks later, they don't get the guy. They still don't have the guy. It means something must have went wrong there. So there's the fact that the Ravens have not been that team that have been connected. It's only when Darius Slay said there's a guy wanting to come to Baltimore, and a lot of people speculated it is DeAndre Hopkins because he is like they're close. Maybe Bills Chiefs. I think that DeAndre's market is shrinking. I think he wants out. It's impossible, but who knows? I think he's going to go to a contender in the AFC, and if let's say the Ravens do go and get DeAndre Hopkins, Lamar is going to be driving as fast as he can, getting as fast as he can to Baltimore to sign that contract because Hopkins, OBJ, Andrews, Bateman, that's your main receiving core. Oh yeah, by the way, you still got a really good defense, really good special teams, really good front office, really good coach. And by the way, which would free up the Ravens in the draft. They have no pressure to draft a receiver. They got no pressure to draft a receiver, so they can go get another corner. They could go and get another guy to replace Calais Campbell or Ben Powers. They could do all that and have those guys on rookie contracts. So I think based on the patterns, could Baltimore do it? Sure. Do I think that this aggressiveness that they've shown when it comes to the receiver position is an indication? Sure. Do I think? But to me, the major domino that fell is this whole thing of this idea that he wants to come to Baltimore, that there's a guy that wants to come to Baltimore. And if it is, that's interesting. So let's talk about another receiver, Chosen Anderson, aka Robbie Anderson. He signed a 1-year deal with the Dolphins. What are your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting one. I mean, it gives the Dolphins another decent target for Tua Tagovailoa. I think he's probably going to factor in as what the wide receiver 3.
Yeah.
In that system behind Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. That's just going to make it.
Colton, if he's still on the team.
Yeah, good point as well. I think they were thinking about maybe trading him. I think I saw a couple rumors about that as well. But it's going to allow the Dolphins to spread the wealth even more around their offense. It's going to make teams harder to game plan against them. Mike McDaniel knows what he's doing. We all saw how good the Dolphins were last year when Tua was healthy, when everyone was healthy on the offense. They were 8-3 for a reason. I think if Tua does stay healthy, this guy could be the limit for this team. Anderson, he's not as good as he used to be, but he's still a solid number 3 guy. I think he can definitely do some damage down there.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that Chosen Anderson obviously didn't do so well with Carolina. Obviously, there are multiple reasons for it. He did well in Carolina. He didn't do so well in Arizona. Obviously, there were multiple reasons for it. I think he's a very good third piece of that offense. Obviously, they lost Gesicki to the Patriots, so they're going to have to replace Gesicki's production. If they keep Cedric Wilson, I think the Dolphins could be in the market for a tight end. I don't think they're going to get Darnell Washington, the guy from Georgia. I think he's going to be a first rounder, and the Dolphins don't have a first rounder. But Dalton Kincaid, the guy I believe from Utah, could be a guy they get. So I like the fit. I like the fact. I like it if he's their third target. Now, if he's forced to be your number 1 target, I would be a little concerned, but we'll see what happens. And if they can go and get a good pass catching tight end to work off of the 3 receivers, I think they're going to be in good shape. Now, also, by the way, what were your thoughts on Tyreek Hill now saying that he's going to finish out this contract and retire?
I don't believe him for a second. I don't. Maybe if he gets a Super Bowl, he rides off in the sunset. I can see that maybe. But I don't think because how long he has? Is it 4 more years on the contract?
3, I think 3.
After it was close. 3 to 4, something like that. If it's 3, he's still going to be relatively
young. He's like 28, 29 right now, or something.
Yeah, so that would be an early age to retire. But we also saw Calvin Johnson retire. I'm not comparing Tyreek Hill to Calvin Johnson here, people. I know Calvin Johnson is the best wide receiver of this generation, but he did retire at an earlier age. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities, but I just don't see it. I don't believe him.
All right, so let's quickly talk about the new ownership potentially for the Commanders. I think what's certain now is that the Snyders are no longer going to be there. Thank goodness. Now, the report were that it was the Josh Harris group. It was Josh Harris. It was Magic Johnson. It was someone else. Now, today, it turns out the sale isn't finalized just yet because someone, I can't remember, it was a DC-based guy. He put in a $7 billion offer, and there's a Canadian billionaire as well. So I guess the question here is for the Commanders, not whoever the new ownership is, for the next year or so, what do you think their biggest priorities are going to be?
In terms of an ownership group?
In terms of a team building, like, do you think they're going to go heavy in, or do you think it's going to be more facilities and
I think
reestablishing?
facilities, I think, what's going to happen with the new stadium? Like, there have been rumors like, oh, is this going to be off 95 down near Dumfries or Woodbridge? That would be ridiculous if you ask me. The traffic is already horrendous there. We all know that. I lived in Northern Virginia for 20 years. You live up in Maryland. We all know how bad that area is. Are they going to build a stadium around there? Are they finally going to get rid of FedEx Field, which has just turned into a dump at this point? They already have their practices in Ashburn. It's actually 5 minutes away from, where I used to live. What's going to happen there? Are they going to move I don't think they're going to move their training camp or anything. That you have that down in Richmond. In terms of a team building, standpoint, how much money is this new ownership group going to spend? If it goes to the Harris group, he already owns the Philadelphia 76ers and the New Jersey Devils. So how much is he going to invest in this team? And also, if this does go through, I think this will, I believe, be the largest sale in North American sports history. Yep. I don't think there's a sale that's going to be as big as this one. The Denver Broncos last year went for $4.65 billion. This is going to go for at least. I don't think that was this. I think the Mets sold for less than this.
I'll double check. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I think the Mets sold for less than what the Commanders are going for right now. I'm glad that the Commanders fans will at least have a stable ownership. We all know how bad the Snyders have been, but also think of the team culture and all that stuff.
I think you're right. $2.4 billion.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was mistaken because Steve Cohen's net worth, I think, is like $13 billion, but the $2.4 billion is to the Mets, so that makes sense.
Yeah, so there's that. And, I'm curious to see how the team culture standpoint changes. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that there have been a lot of cases over the Snyder tenure here where there's been a lot of sexual harassment cases. There's that one going on right now that involves Congress that's been really rough. This organization has been through hell and back under the Snyder ownership. They just need to relax once this goes through. And their fans, this has been a long time coming. They hate the Snyder family. Eventually it's going to come to, on the field results. I just want to see a semblance of balance there. I think that's really what I'm looking for in all areas, Adit, of this organization is balance with the new ownership group because their fans deserve it. I really will say that. We both make fun of the Commanders organization because of how dysfunctional it is and how their fans they get so hyped up every year, but nothing changes. I will be happy for them once this goes through because they deserve to have an ownership group that understands, winning, that, that takes itself out, of roster changes and all this other stuff, because you have it with the Biscotti family. The Steelers fans have it with the Rooney family. They need to have something, I wouldn't say as good as that, but something close. That's my word salad of the day.
Here's what's really icky about the situation. Dan Snyder bought at that point, the Redskins, now the Commanders, for about $800 million. If what this bid is correct, if the $7 billion bid thing was correct, he is going to make hand over fist from selling the Commanders. And am I happy for Commanders fans that the Snyder family's out? Yes. Do I not like the fact that the Snyder family is going to leave with a bunch of lawsuits against them, mistreatment against them, in about let's say this guy who has a $7 billion bid gets the team, a $6.2 billion profit. after all of that. It's like buying a company, building it that's pretty good, running it down over and over and over again. And then some sucker pays you 10, 5, 6, 7, 8 times the amount. There's something icky about it. And it's good for Snyder, which is what I don't like. I do not think we're going to see an active Commanders like we saw the Broncos. I think we're going to see them reestablish the culture because Snyder is not the only rotten snake in that organization. I think you do have those lawsuits are going to reveal who the rotten snakes are. They got to go. That's the first step. The second step is you got to evaluate your team. Do you go after a quarterback now, or do you go and build the team and then get the quarterback next year? I think that's what they're going to do. And whether that's drafting a corner like a Brian Branch, obviously Commanders like their Bama players. Maybe Joey Porter Jr. is a potential fit for the Commanders at 16. I could see them going after someone like him, but I feel good for the fans. I don't like the fact that Snyder is going to end up profiting off of this. But it's it's a renovation. Let's be honest here. It's like renovating a poorly constructed house. And that's what the new ownership has to do. And I hope they do it. The Commander is it is a sad franchise. Look, the Commanders, Washington football team, Redskins, whatever you call it, at one point was an historical franchise.
Yes.
Now it's a cautionary tale of what not to do. And
the fact that they're still selling for this much should show that they are still considered a historic franchise, even though they haven't won anything in 30 years.
Yeah.
More than that, right? More than that, I should say.
They've had 2 playoff wins. They've had 2 playoff wins since Snyder was the owner.
Wow.
So that's where the problem comes into play. So I feel good about fans, but I also don't. There's something really icky about some of this stuff going on. But yeah, I don't anticipate something too active. Because we don't know when this whole thing's going to get approved, and even when they do get approved, they still have to worry about the infrastructure before. Let me rephrase it. They got to worry about the wiring in the house before they worry about the furniture. I'll put it that way. That's kind of the way I look at it. So we're going to be talking about the NFL draft, which is going to be in 2 weeks. Next week, we might do a mock draft next week, but this week, a few pieces of news. Panthers are looking at quarterback. The Texans might not take a quarterback at 2. The Cardinals might trade at 3. Do you have any thoughts on this draft or any bold predictions that you think could happen?
Well, I think I know who's going number 1, and that's Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Everything after that, I think, is a crapshoot. There's so many rumors this time of year. Did you see the latest Jim Irsay tweet from today?
Yeah, he posted a picture.
Freaking Magic Johnson tweet. Why are you tweeting something like that? Saying oh, it could be Will Levis. It could be Will Levis. We could trade back. We could not take a quarterback. We could take a quarterback. It's like, dude.
Will Levis and Jim Irsay just feel like 2 guys at a bar.
Will Levis and Jim Irsay, it's like your long lost cousin meeting that drunk uncle of yours. Yeah, that is what it is like.
Drunk uncle with questionable coffee and food habits.
Your drunk uncle meeting someone, who has some very questionable food takes, I think is the way to say it. That seems like a match made in heaven. I'm not big on the Will Levis hype, to be honest. I think he was fine at Kentucky. I don't think he's worthy of being a top 5 pick in the draft. The Texans, they should take Stroud, but there's been a lot of rumors saying that they could take Will Anderson. That would be really dumb, I think. Just take the quarterback. I don't know why you wouldn't there. The Raiders have been flirting around with taking a quarterback. I think you've been seeing that, but they have the number 7 overall pick. They would have to really trade up in order to get one of the top quarterbacks. Maybe Richardson falls to them, but I think he might go in the top 5 as well. This is shaping up to be a very chaotic, very unpredictable top 10 in the draft. Like, I think everyone only knows who the first pick is going to be. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
After that, say that again.
I think it's Bryce Young.
After that, though, I don't think you can really predict what's going to happen unless you have the Texans taking Stroud. And especially if that happens, what happens after that? Hendon Hooker's been getting a lot of praise lately. Anthony Richardson, obviously Will Levis, Will Anderson, Jalen Carter. Where does he go? I'll have a bold prediction for you, Eddie. I don't think Jalen Carter goes in the top 15 of this draft.
Oh, wow.
I think he might fall all the way down to the Steelers. And look, I don't think the Steelers will take him. I think they have other pressing needs over someone like Jalen Carter. I don't think he goes in the top 15 with all those character issues. Yeah, that's my bold prediction.
Yeah, and also you got to factor in his pro day wasn't really good. Like his pro day was
no.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with my bold prediction: Vikings draft Hendon Hooker.
Oh, okay.
Because think about it, Kirk Cousins. They could get out of Kirk Cousins' contract in a year. I believe they can get it. They can get out of Kirk Cousins' contract in a year. They got to pay Justin Jefferson. So what's the best way to pay Justin Jefferson? Get Kirk Cousins, get his money off the books. Well, the problem is you need a quarterback, right? So Hendon Hooker, if he's connected and he's good, then you could have, and then you get him in the first round, you get a 5-year deal with him, right? With the 5th-year option. So you have him sit for a year, let him recover. Then after a year, yank Kirk Cousins out, put Hendon Hooker in as a starter, who already would have a year in development with Kevin O'Connell and that staff, and then use the money you save from letting go of Kirk Cousins and giving that money to Justin Jefferson. So you got a rookie quarterback and you paid your receiver. So it's almost like that's kind of how I'm thinking. I'm thinking because there's always that one surprise. I think last year Cole Strange for the Patriots. So I'm just trying to figure out what is that one surprise. And I just think that Hendon Hooker, to me, I don't think it's a day one starter. I don't know how healthy he is. But at the same time, the Vikings don't need a quarterback this year. But they may need one next year. And obviously they got to pay Justin Jefferson. So to me, I think Hendon Hooker just makes too much sense for the Vikings. And with a quarterback-centric coach like Kevin O'Connell, I think it makes – I just think that you can make that situation work. Now, the tricky thing now, as for number 2 overall pick, you also got to remember D'Amico Ryans comes from San Francisco. Who does they have in San Francisco? Nick Bosa. Will Anderson, you're thinking Will Anderson could be that Nick Bosa. Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech could be that Nick Bosa. So then now, but the problem, and also, what has San Francisco done? Not had a superstar quarterback.
Oh.
So, again, I don't know why they have faith in Davis Mills. I have no idea. But
that makes no sense to me. Like, you have the number 2 pick. You're going to have a shot at one of the top 2 quarterbacks in this draft. Go draft one. Davis Mills, fine fringe starter. He's not long-term. He's not CJ Stroud. He's not your long-term answer. You have to draft a quarterback there. And I understand Will Anderson's also very good. He's going to be a top 5 pick in this draft, I think. Take the quarterback. It's really not rocket science because if he drops to like where the Bears are now, which is what the Bears have number
9 or 10.
Yeah, somewhere. If he somehow drops all the way there, everyone's just going to be laughing, to be honest.
Yeah, no. So I think that's where my thoughts are. I think someone could trade up for the number 3 overall pick. I think someone will trade up for the number 3 overall pick. I think that you're going to get one team's going to get quarterback desperate. And then apparently Anthony Richardson is getting attention. So whether Seahawks jump the Colts for number 3 overall pick, the Titans apparently, a lot of people are saying the Titans could trade up for a quarterback, which makes sense because Malik Willis and Ryan Tannehill don't seem to be the answer. I mean, what team? Like, I think either Titans or Seahawks will trade up 3. It's what team do you think will trade up for 3 or are most likely?
I'll give you one.
Which one?
Raiders.
I mean,
I'm thinking.
they
I'm
paid
thinking
Jimmy
they
G
might
though.
say that.
They paid Jimmy G a lot of money though. I mean,
I
back
know, but look what they've been doing. They're really flirting with this quarterback class. It's a bold one. They've met with C.J. Stroud. They've met with Bryce Young. They've met with Anthony Richardson. They, I think, are seriously considering taking a quarterback, even though they did sign Jimmy G to that 3-year deal. What if they do draft one of those guys, sit him behind Jimmy G for a year, and then maybe they move on from Jimmy next offseason if he is not that good? I can see it. The Raiders, I think, have definitely been flirting around with that a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I didn't even think about the contract structure for Jimmy G. Maybe they structured it so that they can get out of it within a year.
Yeah.
They maybe, yeah. So, yes, I could see maybe the Raiders as well. But yeah, I mean, that's gonna be really interesting. But it's gonna be intriguing to see what they do. I think that's very clearly there's 5 quarterbacks right now that are ahead of everyone else. I think I'm going to end with this question. Do you think after the first round, how many quarterbacks do you think will be drafted in the second or third round this year? I'm going to say none. I'm going to say none.
That or one. I think most of the quarterbacks go on day 1 or day 3.
Yeah,
It's really that's the thing. Like with this class is so weird. You have so many great options, but you also have so many options who are just backup worthy. There's really nothing in between. Maybe the only one that's in between is Will Levis. I can see him slipping. Other than that, I think Richardson. Well, think about it. Richardson, Stroud, Young, Hendon. I don't know if he'll go round 1. I think it's more likely he might go round 2 or round 3. So maybe I could switch Levis for Hooker, but I'm not. I'm still kind of debating that a little bit.
Yeah, Hendon could very well go round 2. I mean, I just have a feeling that a quarterback is going to try to jump the. I feel like a team's going to try to jump the quarterback race for next season by drafting. Because you think about next year's class, right? Because next year's class is what Caleb Williams, Drake.
He'll probably be the number 1 pick.
Yeah, Drake May's another guy from UNC.
Yep.
Depending on what they do in Texas. I don't know. I mean, Quinn Ayers is not going to be a guy. I think he's probably a 4th, 5th rounder, especially if Arch Manning takes over the starting role. But yeah, and then I don't think JJ McCarthy is going to do enough to be a 1st round consideration. But I mean, yeah, but also you look at the class. You look at this year's class, and it's you got your 5. You got Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, Hendon Hooker, and then you have a large difference, and then you got Tanner McKee, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and whoever else. So I'm going to say maybe 1 quarterback. I know I made the prediction that I think Vikings take Hendon Hooker, but also I'm not 100% certain that going to happen. It just, to me, just makes the most sense, and that might be the most surprise pick. But realistically, if there's one guy that'll be picked in the 2nd or 3rd round, I could see Hendon Hooker. I could also see the Saints going after him in round 2 or round 3 as a way just backing up Derek Carr. So you have Derek Carr for a year or 2, let him walk, and then – but also the Giants potentially for someone.
I'm not really sure about that one. I think they're committed to Daniel Jones.
Yeah, the Giant. I mean, Seahawks. I mean, there's a lot that could happen. So we're gonna end the show on that note. Next week we're gonna be talking a lot more about the draft. If you have any top prospects you want to talk about next week, we can talk about them. Also, any prediction, and we'll try to do a prediction on the top 5 or top 10, and also what we expect the Ravens and Steelers to do. But we'll see you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. Should be a lot of fun.